as always, Zach Ainsworth with the best producer east of the Mississippi, Brandon Taylor, to my right, but you can't tell that on screen. And we have a very special guest today. He hails from Tupelo, Mississippi. He's a fellow father, owner of Misfits Disc Golf. It is Mr. Cole Carr. He is joining us live here on the RideAlong Sports Live Show. He is a Tennessee Vol fan, and he's here with us to break down some of the games and some of the biggest topics in college football today. How are you boys doing?
Good.
Doing good.
Man, just another wonderful day in the middle of the football season. What about you, Cole? What do you think? How you feeling right now at this point?
So what was that again?
Said, how you feeling right now at this point of the season? This time of the year, it's getting cooler outside.
I love the cold weather. So the fact that they told me it was going to be 80 degrees today, I got really upset. After last week, I felt so good.
Yeah, last week, I don't know. There was some days last week like I had to have a jacket, and I don't want to have a jacket, but I don't want it to be hot either. I like a nice 50 degrees somewhere in there. But anyway, there's a lot to get into. A lot went down this past week in college football. A lot's going to go down this weekend. There's some big games coming up, and we're going to break all those down for you in just a second. But first, we kind of wanted to get into a what-if segment. We've done these in the past, and they're a lot of fun. Hypotheticals are always fun to talk about. Even though half the time the scenario we lay out never comes to fruition, it's still fun just to chop it up with the boys and talk about. So the first one I have for everybody that I kind of want to discuss is what if Shane Beamer and the South Carolina Gamecocks lose to Clark Lee and the Vanderbilt Commodores this weekend? What will that mean for Shane Beamer? What will that mean for South Carolina? What will that mean for Vanderbilt? Anybody want to give it a go on your opinion of what would happen if that was to happen?
I think like regardless of the rest of this season, they've had such a down season that he gets next year. But I think the conversations maybe get a little more serious after that, because even in South Carolina in their dark days, they can still beat Vandy. So I think that would be a tough one for him for sure. He might break another foot.
Yeah. I agree with you. I don't think that we'll see like an instant firing or anything. Like I don't think he'll get to the locker room and the AD will come in and say, pack your bags or anything like that. I think his seat would get a little hotter. I don't know if it's really hot right now, but I think there would be maybe a flame lit, maybe some embers start coming up under his seat if you lose to Vanderbilt, because if I'm not mistaken, they're 3-6 on the year, I think, to this point, or something like that. So 3-6.
2-7.
You lose to Vanderbilt, you're 3-7, you're no longer bowl eligible. They do sometimes extend bowl invites to teams that are 5-7, but if you lose to Vanderbilt, I have no confidence you're going to beat Clemson at the end of the year or anything like that. So it would be bad. You'd miss a bowl, something Beamer hasn't done since he's been there. The first 2 years he's made a bowl. You'd miss a bowl. I'd got to think it wouldn't be the best look on the recruiting trail either, losing to Vanderbilt. I don't know if this year for them in general is the best look on the recruiting trail, to be honest with you. I will say, Beamer, the first 2 years he's been at South Carolina, I feel like he overachieved as far as like expectations people had for him. If you remember the run at the end of last year, he beats Tennessee and he beats Clemson, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, like this Shane Beamer arrival. This is his moment. This is where he breaks out and becomes one of the best coaches in college football." And I think people kind of unfairly carried over those expectations into this year. When he beat Clemson to end last year, people thought, oh, this was just the pre-show. Next year we're going to see the main event. And it hasn't panned out well. I don't think it's completely fair. They lost a lot of people off last year's team to the transfer portal and to the draft. So I don't think it was quite fair, but at the same time, it's no excuse to lose to Vanderbilt, and it's really no excuse to be in a one-possession game with Jacksonville State last week, Battle of the Gamecocks, and luckily Jacksonville State throws a pick six so you could seal the victory. So not making excuses for Beamer because there is no excuse, but at the same time, I mean, he has overachieved his first 2 years, in my opinion. So I think we'll cut him a break on this one, but I think next year would be a big year for him as far as if he comes out and he craps the bed next year, just like he kind of did this year. I don't know if they keep him around in that case. But for Vandy, I mean, Vandy last year, let's not forget, they beat Florida and Kentucky. Kind of crazy to remember that. But this year they've been terrible. They've been pretty awful. But I mean, I think if you beat South Carolina, even though they're not a great team, it's an SEC win, and I think for Vanderbilt that's enough. Like one SEC win, you're pretty happy with who you have behind the helm. So I think it would be big for both programs for different reasons. And if you're Shane Beamer, you can't let this happen. You can't lose to Vandy this week. Not that your job's at stake, but maybe some pride. But I think that's the what if, in my opinion, on the whole Shane Beamer thing. Brandon, you got anything to add to what we've said?
You pretty much covered it. I mean, for Vanderbilt, at least for their sake, I mean, you think this is one you might can win. And like you said, like for a team like Vanderbilt, a win, an SEC win is big. It's huge. It's something that, at least this day and time doesn't come around very often.
Statues are built.
Much like the expansion of the stadium, you hear people joke about, oh well, that's nice of them to renovate this stadium to better accommodate the away team's fans, but maybe at some point at Vanderbilt they managed to turn this thing around, maybe look like a Vanderbilt of old, and by old I mean what, like 20 years ago probably. Well, I mean they were all right, maybe 10.
Yeah, James Franklin had them ranked in like 2013. They were a ranked team. And here's a fun fact for you: Vanderbilt, well, Missouri is the only team who hasn't beat Georgia in the Kirby Smart era in the SEC East. Vanderbilt has. Vanderbilt has beaten Kirby Smart, and Missouri hasn't. So I saw that last week, and I was like, I wouldn't have thought that. The more you know. But
But for South Carolina, looking ahead, and you may mention this a minute ago, but look, they have Kentucky, and then Clemson, and this right here, man, you're in for a world of hurt if Beamer can't get this done. If they can't just get through this game, survive at all costs, whatever they have to do, and move on, because Kentucky's going to look to to run all over you as they did to a Florida Gators team earlier in the year.
And you say
maybe
you say do whatever. I won't say that, because I saw a man on Texas A&M this past weekend throw a low blow in a live college football game. So I won't say do whatever. I don't know if y'all saw that, but that reminded me. I watched a lot of WWE when I was growing up, but that reminded me of Ric Flair. He used to drop down on his knees and beg the opponent not to hit him. Please, please, spare me. And then hit him with an uppercut, low blow. And if y'all saw that clip, that dude should be banned for the rest of the year, in my opinion. Like, that's taking it to a whole nother level. But anyway, I got another what if for everyone. This one's has more national repercussions, I guess you would say. But what if the Big Ten / NCAA does not punish Michigan this year and allows Michigan to make the college football playoff after everything that's transpired, I won't even call them allegations. Look, it happened. Let's not be naive here. Yeah. There's too much for it to be a coincidence. The only question is what's going to be the repercussions. But let's just say, the Big Ten supposedly sent a letter this week to Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan team that said, you're probably going to face discipline. The NCAA, they're slow as molasses. They're probably not going to act for 10 years. For being honest. How long did that Tennessee investigation take that resulted in nothing? I mean, it was like 2 years drawn out. But the Big Ten does have the power to punish Michigan if they want. The Big Ten can ban Michigan from making the Big Ten title game this year if they wanted to. They have that right to say, hey, you're not allowed to play in our title championship, and that could keep them out of the playoffs if they're not conference champions, just depending on how the committee looks. But I mean, in y'all's opinion, what does it say to the rest of the nation if you decide not to punish Michigan at all and just let them go with everything that's going on?
I think like regardless of how wrong it was, you kind of open up another can of worms that we kind of tried to fight with NIL. I would say, like in a sense, like we have a free agency now, we really do,
Yeah,
and when you let something this like you said, it's not just like we don't have a little bit of evidence, like it happened.
yeah,
So like you let something like this skate by for a few years, and you take a playoff spot. I think that's just like you're gonna see a lot of other teams doing a lot of other things behind the scenes
yeah.
to try to gain an edge. I think it's just a bad recipe for the can of worms that could be open.
And I think me and Brad did actually discuss this at work the other day, but it it's not like you paying a recruit. Yes, you paying a recruit 10 years ago was wrong. You know, it was illegal. It happened, but it was illegal. Even now, there's a lot of things you can't do to recruits to get them to come to your school. Like a coach can't even take a kid out to a restaurant and buy him a meal. That's still illegal. Um, but there's a difference to me in cheating on the recruiting trail and blatantly cheating on the football field. You're questioning the integrity of the game. We have direct evidence of people clearly stealing signs and people dressing up as other coaches to be on their sideline to steal signs that will directly impact a game on the field. Now, I know recruiting can impact a game on the field, but you don't know if that kid's going to be good or not. You don't know if that kid. There's a lot of variables in that, is what I'm trying to say. There's not a lot of variables in knowing exactly what other people are about to call. So this is like a scandal I don't think we've ever seen before. We've seen Hugh Freeze and the recruiting, and that's been going on for a long time. There's been multiple teams that have gotten in trouble for recruiting violations, but as far as my knowledge, I don't remember in my lifetime anyone ever getting in trouble for actually cheating in the middle of a football game. And that's what you have here. And I think if you don't punish Michigan, it's just a failure on your part. Like, there's no way you can let them make the playoff. I mean, they blatantly cheated. If you don't punish them, I have to question what else you've let slide over the years. Like, I don't know. That's just a whole different ball game. It makes me question the integrity of the game if you choose not to punish them. I think the Big Ten needs to come out and say, hey, we know the NCAA is slow as molasses, but we're going to act. We are going to ban you from the conference title game. And I don't even know if that's enough because, I mean, the playoff committee could still vote them in, even though they're not conference champs. Maybe people think this might be extreme, but I don't. I think the Big Ten should come in and say you have to vacate all your conference wins this year. We've never seen that, a vacation of wins during the middle of a season, but I think it's necessary here. You have direct evidence that they cheated in conference games this year. So I think they need to be held responsible, and if they're not, like you said, I mean, what's next? What's somebody going to attempt next? Where do you draw the line? I think the line, they way overstepped the line here, and yeah, if you don't punish them, I mean, I don't know what that means for college football, but I don't think it means good things.
Well, you're ignoring they're just ignoring it, and you saw what the commissioner of the college football playoff said.
Yeah.
Basically saying like, oh, the NCAA, that's on them. We're not going to worry about that. That's paraphrasing, obviously. He said, the quote was, that's a NCAA problem, not a college football playoff problem. It just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I understand at this point, them not acting, them not altering their rankings just based on, and like you say, you can't say speculation because there's obvious video evidence of this, but I think I feel they're standoffish on it. They want to wait till the NCAA does something, which, when is that going to be?
Years.
If the Big Ten does act and the schools in the conference, I think they all want something to happen, and why wouldn't they? But how does the college football playoff committee, the commissioner of the playoff, how do they respond to that? and how do they move forward? Like, say in 2 weeks, just say 2 weeks, the Big Ten lays out some kind of punishment. Do they take that into consideration, or they just brush that off?
I don't know. That's another question. Like, if the Big Ten does hand out punishment, like you're saying, does the playoff committee care? Does the playoff committee worry about that? I think you have to. Like, and I know they said that it's not their problem, it's the NCAA's problem, it's not the playoffs committee problem. Bull snot. You get to determine who gets to play for the most precious prize in the sport. You get to choose who gets their name on national television, who gets all that money from the playoffs, who even gets the chance to play for a national title. You can control a lot. And I don't care how mad Michigan gets. That's another can right there. What if you purposely keep Michigan out of the playoffs? Does Michigan have grounds to sue the playoff committee? Like, how does that work? I don't even know all the legal
That may
stuff
be
about
part of it
that.
too. They're afraid to, lack of a better term, like make Michigan angry. I don't know how else you would say it. Like, okay, how would you go about that too? Say 2 weeks, however long, 1 week, next week, whenever it is when the Big Ten does anything. How do they handle that?
I don't know, man. Like, that's what I'm saying. Is there some type of thing? Like, say the Big Ten bars them from the conference championship, and the playoff committee puts Michigan at 5 on the final day of rankings, even though they're undefeated. They don't, like, say they beat Penn State, they beat Ohio State, but they don't have a conference championship. And the playoff committee looks into the camera and says, yeah, the reason we left Michigan out was because they were barred from their conference title, and we took that into consideration. At that point, like I'm saying, does the University of Michigan step in and say, like, I don't know, like the legality of that? Can they step in and say, this vote was rigged against us? This is like bias towards the University of Michigan. You can't bar us from this. You can't keep us out, because the playoff committee holds no grounds over these universities. I mean, they're just people voting to send you somewhere. They don't control you. The Big Ten is different. The Big Ten is a conference that can tell Michigan what they can and can't do. The playoff committee's not. So then it's like a whole legality of things. Is it illegal for the playoff committee to purposely not vote someone in because of something that didn't, some type of extracurricular? I have no idea. I don't want to know. I just want Penn State, please beat Michigan this weekend. It'd make things a lot more simple.
Please do.
But I don't know, man. We could go down 15 rabbit holes on that. I mean, I think the coach ought to be punished. He clearly knew about it. Maybe you punish him, say he can't be a part of a college football team for 5 years, however long, because he definitely knew about it. Yeah, then did Central Michigan know that the random guy wandering on their sideline was part of Michigan? You getting into all
How
that?
does that happen?
He knew somebody somewhere and got credentials, man. Like, I don't know if everybody at Central Michigan knew what was going on, but they have all come out and said, yeah, we didn't know who the dude was. You didn't question it? Like, you're part of the coaches. The head coach is like, yeah, we saw him on the sideline, but we didn't know who he was. I mean, that makes me feel like I could print off a fake credential at home and wear a lanyard and get on the sideline. Like,
Get your press pass, you get out there.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm going to make a fake press pass now, because the head coach for Central Michigan was like, yeah, I saw him on the sideline, but I had no idea who he was. I'm like, dude, like, you didn't think to question the guy or anything like that? But whatever. I don't think it's going to be good. I think there's going to be a lot of branches off of this that affect, I don't know. Then there's the whole, did South Carolina get the signals for Michigan to beat Tennessee? I've read those theories, and I honestly think it's possible. I know you've probably seen those, Cole.
Yeah, so like we played terribly. I'm okay. Like I'm okay. We lost that game. But if you look at, besides the Tennessee and Clemson game, from then on, look at their offense. That's all I gotta say. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's not like Spencer hadn't played well, but like they have not put up points.
Yeah, I saw a thing. So last year South Carolina. So if you're listening and you don't know what we're talking about, let me provide some clarity, because we might not have explained well. So basically, there's this rumor. It's kind of an online rumor that South Carolina last year when they beat Tennessee, it was because they had basically the Connor Stallions got in Michigan. It's pretty proven that he had tickets to Tennessee games last year and to Clemson games because they were possible playoff contenders that would play Michigan in the playoffs. So there's a rumor that Shane Beamer, someone at South Carolina, got the signals that Michigan had observed and used them against Tennessee and Clemson. And there's some things that kind of make me think they did, but so South Carolina had scored, I think, 3 points against Kentucky, and then they scored 0 against Florida, I think. And then they scored 63 on Tennessee, and they scored 40-something on Clemson. And another interesting fact out of that, the entire defense of South Carolina wore wristbands in the game against Tennessee, and they had not wore wristbands with plays on them up until that game, and everybody on defense had a wristband on, looking down at the wristband. I mean, that's just a little suspicious, if you ask me.
Because Jalen Hyatt had a great year last year, but a lot of it was Josh can scheme with the guy who's a track star and can catch.
Yeah.
And he couldn't get open all game long. And it was I just kept scratching my head there's just no way they're able to not to keep up with him, but just scheme. Someone else got to be open, But who knows, man?
I don't know. I'm interested to see once the
30.
Michigan thing gets calm, I wonder if there are going to be are they going to be able to connect this to other teams that reached out, because a lot of the Big Ten teams have come out and said they knew this had been going on for 2 or 3 years, that they were very suspicious that something was happening. Well, that makes me think, hey, if you're suspicious that they're doing that, did you never give them a phone call and say, hey, what y'all got on Wisconsin? What y'all got on Penn State? I mean, that's a whole nother question. But like I said, we could spend an hour on that, but we'll move on. Everybody's probably tired of hearing about the Michigan situation. I just want there to be some type of ruling, or beat them Penn State, beat them whoever plays them, just beat them. All right.
Well, Zach, do you want to take another look back at Week 10 before we put it in drive and drive on into Week 11?
Yeah,
You want me to run through some scores here?
Yeah, just run through a quick little recap for everyone in case they weren't able to watch. Run through some SEC scores from last week.
This would be our rapid recap, as we like to call it here. Your Week 10 recap for the SEC slate will start. First game here, Arkansas and Florida. This game went to overtime. Arkansas gets the victory 39-36. I heard a funny joke about this game, that something about Florida wearing black to their own funeral or something. I don't know. Anyway.
Well, big win here for Arkansas and Sam Pittman. They're struggling this year. Came into this game 2-6 or 3-6, something not good. And they came in 2-6. They're 3-6 now. Not good. They came into this. I didn't think they were going to win. They're going to the swamp. No way they win this. They pull it out. Did not see this coming on the road. Florida wore black for a day game. I don't need to say anything else. I mean, that's stupid. I don't know what else to say. If you're going to break out the black unis, it needs to be a night game. But anyway, Billy Napier loses. He's not getting fired. I've seen a lot of people out there saying, fire Billy. Look, he's got the number 2 recruiting class in the entire country. He's recruiting his tail off. And, the results haven't been great this year. But he also, he beat a Tennessee team that he shouldn't have. He's not as talented. They're not as talented as Tennessee. What I'm saying is, yes, the Arkansas loss is bad, but there's been some good mixed in. And I don't think there's any way you should fire Billy. No, you don't fire Billy Napier. You give him at least another year. He's got, like I said, a great recruiting class coming in. Big win for Arkansas. Probably saved Sam Pittman's job. Billy Napier's not getting fired. That's
2 birds, 1 stone, right? We had Florida. It was going to be a rough season.
I thought preseason Florida was going to be rougher than they have been, and then Tennessee let them beat them. And really,
sorry guys.
Sorry.
I picked them to win 3 games. That's how bad I thought they would be.
Me too. I picked them to win 3 games as well. So we look stupid.
Moving on here, you had the
I also
battle
picked
of
State
the,
to go 8-4.
what you got to say, Cole? 8
I
and
said I also
4.
picked State to go 8-4, and that didn't happen. So
I did too. So, high five.
Man, we we can't get them all right. I mean,
Can't even get half of them right if you're me. So,
so we had the Battle of the Gamecocks in Columbia, South Carolina. South Carolina gets the victory in that game, 38-28. Is there a whole lot to say?
I mean, Jacksonville State's a good Group of 5 team. They were 7-2. You still, if you're South Carolina, you should handle them. I think you were like 15-point favorites. You won by 10, but the score looks worse than it was. South Carolina was up by 3, and Jacksonville State drove all the way down the field for the game-winning drive and threw a pick 6 in their own end zone, like the guy ran it all the way back. So it made it look worse, but Jacksonville State had a chance to win. You can't let that happen if you're Shane Beamer. Now he got the win, so,
I mean, it is extremely close. I mean, it does seem closer than it should have been. Spencer Rattler was 27-38, just shy of 400 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did throw that pick, but hey, what do they call it? Survive and advance.
I mean, I don't know what they're advancing to, but they survived. I mean,
they're just trying to make it. I don't know.
It's hard for me to spend a lot of time talking about irrelevant programs. And right now, South Carolina, if you're out there, you are irrelevant. Next.
Well, let's talk about another exciting and wonderful game. The 17th ranked Tennessee Volunteers, and these were the rankings at the time that these games were played, 59-3 over UConn.
Cole, you take it away. There ain't much for me to say. You say whatever you need to say.
I'm not gonna lie, I was nervous. They went down and scored a field goal after we scored, and I was like, oh no, this is gonna be bad. But no, defense played well. They got 3 scores, which is I think either the first time in Tennessee history or the first time in like the last 20 or 30 years. But defense played well. Joe played well. He didn't play that long. We got to see Nico, which everybody was just waiting to see, and he looked sharp, looked comfortable. They took him out, and so, but I mean, Jalen Wright ran for like 80 and 85 yards the second play of the game, I think. So
yeah, that set the tone.
Yeah, it's hard to beat that. So yeah, they talked a lot of crap, but didn't pay off.
I saw the Jalen Wright run. I saw the Ramel Keaton catch, and combined, I don't think there was a defender within 50 yards of either of them. But
he threw it deep. I was like, yeah. I looked up. I was like, there's literally no one. Why do you wait that long? There's no one around him.
But yeah, I mean that one was ugly. They beat him by 56. Yeah, Tennessee. They got a big one coming up. We're gonna dive into that when we get into our preview. But yeah. Big win for Tennessee over UConn, and no, we're not talking about basketball. All right, what's next?
The Texas A&M Aggies rode on down the road. They headed east to Oxford to play the Ole Miss Rebels. The Rebels pull it out 38-35. They go down there. They're leading the whole game, and then Texas A&M gets the first lead with just a few minutes left in the game.
That's always scary.
Yes, it is, and it's happened too many times for the Rebels this year, but they pull it off. They get the 38-35 victory and advance to play Georgia this Saturday.
Man, this was a barn burner. I watched this the entire game because, spoiler alert, I'll be in Athens this weekend, and I'm pumped for that. So I kind of wanted to see. I had already bought tickets before this game kicked and before it was a night game, and yeah, before all the awesomeness happened. But I watched this entire game because I was like, I want to see what Ole Miss is about. I hadn't got to watch. I had watched Ole Miss play LSU and Bama, but Ole Miss jumped out to 14-0, and I was like, oh, they really about to run Jimbo out the building. But no, A&M fought back. Kudos to look. You know, I should probably talk about Ole Miss because they won, but let me say something about Texas A&M. Jimbo's a disaster, first of all. They've got so much talent. They're the most underachieving university in sports, not just football. If you look at the amount of money they have in sports, they've never won a national title, I don't think, in any of the three major sports, basketball, football, or baseball. Pretty positive on that. I could be wrong. They might have got a baseball one. But they're underachieving as a university. I'm sorry. As far as athletics go, this is ridiculous. Get Jimbo out of there. He needs to be fired. He needs to be canned. He can't get it done. But I want to say something positive to end all that. Look, when they got down 14-0 to Ole Miss, the way their season's gone, they should have just laid down and rolled over. Like, that's what your mind would tell you. Like, look, we're not living up to expectations just like every year. Our coach is probably in his, maybe not his last year, but it hadn't been a good run. We're down 14-0 to a team that's better than us. Our backup quarterback's in, Max Johnson. Let's just lay down, give it a little effort, go home. But they didn't. I'll give them props to that. They haven't given up on Jimbo completely. I think a lot of times there, if a coach is on the hot seat, you see the team just kind of roll over. They didn't. They fought back. Great football game.
They found some momentum. They blocked that field goal early in that game.
Took it back to the house.
Took it back to the house, and they built on that momentum. They said, you know what, maybe we can do this,
And, I thought that was the worst that Ole Miss's defense has probably played all year. Because I can excuse them letting LSU drop 40 on them. LSU's got the best offense in the country this year when Jaden Daniels plays. It's electric. But, yeah, I thought that was the worst Ole Miss's defense has probably looked this year because Texas A&M doesn't exactly have a juggernaut on offense. Look at what Tennessee did to Texas A&M's offense when they played. What'd they score, Cole? 6? Something like that?
I think it was 13-14. Was it 13-14?
Maybe
I
something
can't remember.
like that.
I hated that game. So
It was
we
just
won off of a kick return. So
yeah.
punt return.
So I thought Ole Miss's defense looked subpar, but I thought Ole Miss's offense looked really, really good. And, I mean, that's kind of what we expect out of a Lane Kiffin coach team. But, I mean, I tell you, Jackson Dart's a ball player. Like, Jackson Dart and Quinshon Judkins, Jackson Dart right now, to me, I don't think it's a question. I think he's a top 3 SEC quarterback this year based off what he's done. Their one loss. Look, this is – I don't know if you agreed with this or not, Brandon, and we'll get into it in a minute, but this weekend is – some Ole Miss fans are saying this is the biggest game in Ole Miss's history this weekend. And we'll get into that in a minute, but, yeah. So what's next?
The Georgia Bulldogs at home versus the Missouri Tigers. Georgia, the game was close, but Georgia manages to get it done, 30-21, and they continue on their. I'm trying to find the right words. Their reign of terror on everybody that they play.
So 26 in a row. Look. This stat just blew my mind. 3 years ago, Kirby Smart's head coaching record was 49-14 as a head coach. 3 years later, he's 90-15. He's 41-1 in the last 42 games. It's the most dominant run in SEC history record-wise. 26 games in a row. We'll talk about Ole Miss in a minute. I think Georgia's hitting their stride at the right time. Georgia in this one, yeah, Missouri's a really good team. I've heard people out there saying, why did Georgia only beat Missouri by 9? Look, Missouri's a top 15 team for a reason. They've got a good quarterback. Luther Burden's second in the SEC in receiving yards. He's a really dangerous receiver. They have a really tough defense that is one of the oldest defenses in the SEC. Missouri's good, man, but as a Georgia fan sitting there watching this, that was never really a moment I was scared, even though it was a closer game. When Georgia's defense needed to make a stop, they made a stop. When their offense needed to score, they scored. And there ain't much else to say about it. I mean, kudos to Missouri. They're a lot better than I thought they would be. I think I said they'd go 7-5. Look, if they beat Tennessee and they beat Arkansas and they play somebody else that's not tough, they got 3 games left. If they win all 3, they're 10-2. and a double-digit win season for Missouri, that's like a Super Bowl in the NFL. Like, that's a pretty big deal if you're at Missouri. So kudos to them. They played I know the Auburn game was closer, but Georgia kind of shot themselves in the foot some that game. That Missouri team played Georgia the best anybody has all year.
Yeah, they're the second best team in the East easily.
I think so too. Sorry to say that, but you admitted it first.
Doesn't mean we're not going to beat them, but they have the best roster, second best roster.
Yeah, and I don't know. I saw a lot of people disrespecting Missouri online after that game, but those are just people looking at the logo. Like, you can't just look and say, "Oh, it's Missouri." This isn't the same Missouri the last few years. They're a good team, and Georgia got by them, and they passed that first big test. Now they got 2 more big tests before they get to play Georgia Tech at the end of the year, and I'm not going to call that a test. So, is the last one LSU Bama, Brandon?
Yeah, we'll skip to that one. LSU Bama. Alabama gets the win 42-28.
Look, Jaden Daniels, man, he's played like the best quarterback in the country this year. That would be my Heisman vote if they had. Look, they have 3 losses, and as bad as people hate it, the Heisman, I've seen a lot of people saying Jaden Daniels still deserves the Heisman. Look, man, in this sport, I'm sorry, but losses do count against you when it comes to Heisman voting. Like, yes, Jaden Daniels, statistically, he's been by far the best quarterback in the SEC. He's been one of the best in the country. I mean, he was shredding Alabama before he got injured. I mean, that Alabama defense is elite, too. And he was absolutely shredding them on the ground, throwing. I don't know if y'all watched it, but it was like watching Superman. Like, he was getting away from sacks. Then, unfortunately, he goes out with a concussion. Was it targeting? That's been the big argument lately. It wasn't called targeting, therefore it wasn't. That's all I'm going to say. I don't want to get into it. They said it wasn't. It wasn't. He's not. I mean, he got an unsportsmanlike penalty. It was a hard hit. I know that. And anyway, even if he would have stayed in, I think Bama was still going to win that game because Bama's defense would get a stop before LSU's defense would get a stop, if that makes sense. But no, I don't think Jaden Daniels is going to win the Heisman. You have too many losses, especially at quarterback. I think losses should count against you as a quarterback, in my opinion. Like, I understand it's not his fault. Their defense is that terrible, but just the nature of the beast. Wins have always kind of counted against the Heisman, and they still do today. But did y'all have any thoughts on this? I thought Jalen Milroe played the best game of his career.
Incredible.
4 rushing touchdowns. I mean, he went off. He looks like he's hitting his stride. I will say LSU's defense is terrible. So, I mean, I'm going to look at it a little objectively, but if he rolls like that, that dude, I don't know about y'all, he looked like he could run 30 miles an hour.
Yeah.
He could fly. He can sling it. If he starts playing like that, Alabama's going to be real, real hard to beat. But y'all have any thoughts on that one?
I think the last 3 games you've really seen offense. Alabama's offensive coordinators, not develop plays, but really invest in him and his play style.
Yeah,
because you've seen that he's played really well the last few weeks. From the second half of the Tennessee game on, like, they've looked really good.
That's scary, because they've got. I mean, their defense to me is the best in the SEC. They have a super. I mean, it's a stingy defense, and they get after you. You add an elite offense into that. I mean, if they win the SEC, they control their destiny. If they win the SEC and win the SEC championship, they're going to the playoff. There's no doubt. They've just got to win out. That loss at Texas made it to where you can't make a mistake. You don't show up against Georgia or whoever in the East in the SEC championship. I mean, even if you get beat by a point, you're not making the playoff. So, that's kind of dangerous. Alabama with their back against the wall. How many times have we seen it? A bunch. We've seen Alabama with their back up against the wall a bunch, and they usually win the fight.
Saban finds a way to win. He always has, and probably that's to be determined.
He's like 72. Like, retire, dude. Like, go to the beach somewhere. Like, stop.
What's that guy's name in Oregon?
Dan Lanning.
next coach?
Probably. He was a grad assistant at Alabama. He's a Alabama alum. Then he was the DC at Georgia. You know, the other day somebody said if Kirby Smart, I hope Kirby doesn't hear this, but if he died in a car accident tomorrow, which, you know, I really hope doesn't happen, somebody said, who would you want to be Georgia's next head coach? And mine's Dan Lanning.
Eric Dooley.
Mine's Dan Lanning, without a doubt. But yeah, I hope Bama doesn't get him. I think he would continue a great reign there at Alabama. All right, so you ready to get into the preview?
Let's flip the script here. Let's stop talking about Week 10 because we got a big week ahead of us. There's at least two. Well, there's only two big ranked versus ranked games this weekend. In particular, well, Ole Miss, Georgia, like we talked about a minute ago. There's also Tennessee, Missouri. But why don't we start 11 a.m. Central Time? Alabama versus Kentucky. This is at Kentucky.
Yeah. Well,
right now, I've got Alabama minus 10.5.
Yeah, I believe that's the spread. But first, let's listen to our partners from Manscaped. Just kidding. So
I was about to say, dang.
I figured if you've listened to podcasts or watched YouTube, you're probably tired of the Manscaped ads, so we won't hit you with one. But get the Lawnmower 4.0. Right. But anyway, so Alabama is traveling to the Bluegrass State to play Kentucky. Alabama's a 10.5 point favorite. Did my wire go out, Brandon, or am I good?
No, you're good.
Oh, my bad. Thought we lost audio. We're Gucci. So Alabama travels to Kentucky to play the Wildcats. You know, this is weird, and y'all might disagree. Usually I could picture a team playing at a certain field. I don't know if I've ever seen Alabama play at Kentucky. Like in my head, like I'm trying to picture Alabama's players playing on Kentucky's field, and I can't see it.
I was trying to picture the same thing. It doesn't happen very often. I don't know when the last time was.
I mean, I'm sure it's obviously happened for sure, but like in my head, I was picturing like Nick Saban running out on the Kroger Field with the boys, and I'm like, yeah, I honestly don't think I've ever seen that. But anyway, look. When I was thinking today about a prediction to give for this game and how this is going to go, look, Kentucky's coming off of I don't want to say a big win, but they beat Mississippi State in a can't-lose game. Mark Stoops cannot go down to Starkville and lose that game for multiple reasons. We didn't really touch on this, but Mississippi State's an absolute disaster right now. You've got to fire Zach Arnett. In my opinion, he's just not ready to be a head coach. Great defensive coordinator, but he has no confidence on the sideline.
Tough spot he's put in.
But, I'll give him that. No one expects to be kind of shoved into the head coach's spot because of
no interim tag.
I mean, no.
At least usually you see an interim tag get thrown on a coach for a year, sometimes 2 years, but usually a year, and you get a chance to not have all that pressure on you. But yeah, it's a tough situation down there in Starkville.
But Kentucky, they won that game in a can't-lose game. It wasn't a must-win. It was a can't-lose. There's a difference. But anyway, so they're coming off that. They're hosting Alabama. Look, Alabama's just hit a groove recently. Cole just kind of touched on it. Ever since the second half of that Tennessee game, Jalen Milroe and that offense looked like a different beast. The receivers woke up on the outside. Isaiah Bond, Jermaine Burton, Kendrick Law. All those guys have kind of stepped up. Jalen Milroe looks like Superman back there against LSU. I mean, they're calling designed runs. I don't know what they were doing at the beginning of the season, but it wasn't really working, and I think they realized that. Their defense is stout. This ultimately came down to this for me. I think Kentucky, it's 11 a.m. kickoff. Some people say, maybe Bam will be groggy coming in there, coming off a big win against LSU. Here's the thing. I don't care how good Alabama's offense looks. I don't know if Kentucky's going to score on Alabama. I don't trust Kentucky's offense right now to score against that Alabama defense. That's what it really comes down to for me. I'm going to give my prediction. I'll say Alabama wins this game. I don't think it's going to be particularly close. I'll say a final score of, we'll say 35-10. They beat them by 25 points. I think Devin Leary, he's looked a lot better the past few weeks. It seems like playing Tennessee's defense will do that for you. But no, he got going against Tennessee, and then he played really well against Mississippi State. He's not going to play well against Alabama. Ray Davis, Alabama's not going to let him run. If they can't run, they can't do anything. Give me Bama 35-10. Anybody else got a take on this?
It was 2013 the last time Alabama played in Lexington, by the way. And the previous time before that was 2009. So 10 years ago. It's a long time. Will Milroe's ground attack continue? Like, is he going to run all over this team? You think he would. Kentucky's 21st in rushing defense. They've allowed just shy of 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns. Does those stats really matter when you're playing a team like Alabama? Probably not. I don't think it matters where this game's played. I don't think what time it's played. Kentucky is a one-dimensional team.
Yeah, I mean, if they can't run, they can't really do anything.
And I don't know. I don't see how they can score very many points. I'm going to say I'll go ahead and give you my score. Give me Alabama. I'll slightly differ from yours. I'll go 38-13. Alabama gets the victory.
Tied. Cole, what do you say?
Well, first I want to comment on the Tennessee joke. It also helps if you're holding our defensive lineman and they don't call a penalty. But I just want to say there has not been a live ball penalty called on our last 3 opponents. But it's gonna be 37-13. Kentucky will look like they'll have promise early, maybe like the first drive they'll score, and then that's probably gonna be it. And then Alabama will let them score at the end somewhere. But
maybe boa constrictor them, just pin them down and make them tap out, basically. Yeah, I think if you're listening to this, you should probably agree with us on this. It's not going to be particularly close. Obviously, we all took Alabama to cover. If you're placing bets out there, I'd smash Alabama to cover. I don't see if – I mean, I will say Alabama only beat Arkansas by 3. People forget about that, but I don't think you're going to check your ESPN's app later in the day on Saturday and see that Kentucky only lost by a touchdown. I think Alabama's going to open up a can on them. All right, Brandon, what's next? We go chronological here. So after is there another 11 a.m.?
Yeah, you've got Vanderbilt in South Carolina. Is there very much you want to say about that? It's in Columbia, South Carolina. South Carolina minus 13.5. Over-under is 58.5, which that's kind of a maybe like a default.
Yeah.
What was the default over-under?
About 50-something.
Yeah.
But I didn't know if it was going to be in Columbia or in that construction zone up at Nashville. Gosh, when Georgia played there this year, I was just amazed. I was watching it on TV, and I was like, they're literally playing college football in a construction site.
Yep.
Like, each end zone. Like, the cameramen were having to wear hard hats. That's what got me. I was like...
They're part of the crew. They're part of the construction crew. You got the video board suspended between a couple
two cranes holding up the video board.
They're making it work, I guess. I mean,
but look, we kind of touched on it earlier. Shane Beamer can't afford to lose this game. He's going to start feeling a little pressure if he loses this game to Vanderbilt, especially at home, man. You can't let Vanderbilt come into your home stadium and beat you. It's embarrassing enough to lose in Nashville, but at least you could blame it on it being really quiet or something. So you can't let them beat you in Columbia. I don't think they do here. I'm not going to overanalyze and give a lot of stats. South Carolina's got the better team, and I think it's sad to say because South Carolina to me probably has the second or third worst roster in the SEC. But they're still a good bit better than Vanderbilt, roster-wise. That's just how bad Vanderbilt is, in my opinion. I'll take South Carolina to win this one. You said 13.5-point favorites.
13.5, yep.
I'll take South Carolina 31-17. I think they...
17?
Was that 14?
Yeah.
Is that 14? I'm not a mathematician.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
yes,
14. So
yes,
they cover
yes,
by half a
yes.
point. Hey,
Nice.
if you're betting on that when you'll breathe a sigh of relief at the end of the day if that happens.
Well, look, we talked about this a minute ago briefly. This is Vanderbilt's chance. It's their chance to get an SEC win.
Their only chance.
Their only chance to get an SEC win. Look, we didn't pick them to win any SEC games. We were in agreement on that, but I thought they had a chance maybe to pull some close losses. You may get a win here or there like last year. This is their last chance. They've got a good chance. I think South Carolina finds a way, and I almost want to kind of go against the grain and just pick Vanderbilt. Just
outright. Just for chaos.
Just for chaos. But Spencer Rattler, I don't know what we'll see production-wise. South Carolina, I think they're in the league with, and you may disagree with this, Zach, Arkansas, identity crisis. Mississippi State, maybe identity crisis.
I think Mississippi State's worse than identity crisis.
South Carolina, identity crisis?
I don't know. I think the identity crisis is trying to figure out who's good enough to be on the field. Like, I just don't think they have very good players. I don't know if it's like an identity crisis as far as like they don't know what their offense or defense needs to look like, kind of like you had at Mississippi State early in the year. I just think they don't have good players. But what's your final score prediction?
30. Give me, actually, this isn't going to surprise. It may surprise you. I don't know. This game's probably going to be a train wreck, but 35-24 South Carolina. They don't cover.
Okay, he's taking Vanderbilt. Well, not to win, but
Hold
the
on.
points.
Hey, easy now. Easy. 35-24 South Carolina.
Y'all give it. I don't think they're going to score any points, but I'm taking Vanderbilt 21-17.
Wow.
I'm gonna keep it short and really sweet. I can't stand South Carolina, and I think Spencer Rattler. I think he could have a good day against Vanderbilt, but I think their offensive line is so terrible that if they don't have any running game going early on, that they're gonna just blitz and go after the quarterback all day. So I'm gonna go 21-17 Vanderbilt.
He said what I wanted to say.
Does I think you might have said this earlier, but does Beamer have a job after that game?
Yeah, he does. No one else wants to go to South Carolina, so really, I don't know who they're gonna get. So he does love South Carolina, and so as long as he's not cheating, we'll let him come back another year.
All right, you heard it here first. Cole says Vanderbilt's gonna knock off South Carolina.
I like it.
All right, what's next?
The next game up, it's going to be on CBS, 2:30 Central Time. You've got the Tennessee Volunteers traveling to Como, that's Columbia, Missouri, to play the Missouri Tigers. Both teams are 7-2, and it looks like Tennessee is a 1-point favorite.
Yes, number 13 Tennessee and number 14 Missouri now.
That's correct. Yep.
Because the new rankings just came out, but
they were 17-12 for the previous week. Tennessee was 17.
So Cole, I'll let you take it away first since this is your team, and then I'll tell you why you're wrong.
All right. So last year, for 3 quarters, I did not want to play Missouri, and I told everybody this year I said Missouri's going to be good. They may not win the SEC East, but they're going to be good, and I don't want to play them. I definitely don't want to play them after seeing our offense this year. But I do think we can run the ball on just about anybody. So I think that's going to help us. We're going to be in the game at least for 3 quarters, I think. It really depends on what Brady Cook does. If he starts running all over us, and we're not spying or anything, and then we can't protect our DBs in the back, and then the refs aren't calling any holding calls in the game, we can't get to the quarterback, it's going to be a long day because our defensive secondary is so depleted. I am going to take Tennessee just because obviously I'm a Tennessee fan, but I can't count out Josh Heupel. He's won a few games this year that in the past we'd have lost. We'd have lost that A&M game. We'd have lost that Kentucky game very easily. And you can't have a much better day than Devin O'Leary had against us, and we still win that football game. So I'm going to say Tennessee 27-24.
27-24 is taking the Vols. Let me give my prediction on this. So, Tennessee, man, I want to describe them as up and down a little bit, but okay, the first quarter against Alabama, or the first half against Alabama, it's like, wow, this is the Tennessee I kind of remember from last year in some ways. Like they're really clicking. Tennessee from last year with better defense, may I add, because Tennessee's defense is a lot better this year than it was last year. And that first half against Alabama, as I watched that, I'm thinking, man, this looks familiar. Like they're holding their own. And then the second half happened, and it's kind of the tale of Tennessee's season to me almost. They kind of implode a little bit, and it's like, man, what happened? Like after the game was over, I was like, what happened? The same thing happened in the Swamp. I watched that game. That game from the beginning was kind of like Florida just
That
had
was
the
bad.
momentum.
Yeah.
But you watch the A&M game, they struggle with A&M, and it's not this kind of struggle you would think. In the past, you would think, oh, it's 50-45. It's just a shootout. No, this was a low-scoring defensive battle. There's been multiple times this year Tennessee's had to rely on their defense to keep them in games, and that's not been the case the past couple of years. It's been, we got to try to beat everybody in a track meet because our defense isn't going to stop anybody. But this year they have a good defense. I tell you right now, I've told this podcast before, James Pierce is going to be a household name. He's a beast if he's not already a household name. I think he's an elite edge rusher, and I believe he's a freshman, if I'm correct on that, or a sophomore, one of the two.
Yeah.
He's a young player. I really like James Pierce. All this being said, Missouri's got a good offense, so it's good offense versus good Tennessee defense. Brady Cook, he can throw the ball. He can really hurt you with his legs. He actually played good in the first half last year against Tennessee. Then Tennessee really just blew their doors off in the second half. But Brady Cook's a good player. Luther Burden's questionable right now, according to Eli Drinkowitz. I think he's going to probably play. This is for second place in the East. I think this is a big game for both teams. So you got good offense versus good defense. We flipped the ball over. I mean, you got a great rushing offense. I don't really know. I'm not sold on Tennessee's passing offense still to this point. I think it's okay. You either overthrow it or you don't catch it when it is online a lot of the time.
That's so true.
And you got a good Missouri defense. They're not elite. They're not even as good as Tennessee's defense. But, okay, I'll say mediocre Missouri defense. So it's kind of mediocre offense, in my opinion, versus mediocre defense. And then on the other side, it's good offense versus good defense. It's a really even game. Look, it's in Columbia. The Tigers, I think Missouri's got a better roster. But Josh Heupel owns Eli Drinkowitz. That's why the Vols win this one, 35-24.
Wow, giving us 35. I appreciate you.
35-24. I think, honestly, I do think Missouri's got the better team. I think there's a little edge there. Eli Drinkowitz, if you may remember last year, got a little upset that Heupel ran up the score on him, and I think that will be motivation for Drinkowitz. I just don't think it matters. I think there's some type of voodoo. I think Heupel just has some type of edge over Missouri. He was at Missouri as an offensive coordinator years ago. I think maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe he holds a little bit of a grudge. I'm not sure. But I think Tennessee gets it done, and it doesn't make sense, but that's college football. Not all the better team doesn't always win. It's every Saturday's a different ball game. So give me Tennessee to win. They beat them by 9. They cover, and a huge win for Tennessee. And I would say having what they've been dealt this year on offense, I don't think Joe Milton's that great. If you win 10 games with Joe Milton, that says a lot about Josh Heupel.
No, this has been so obviously Georgia front runner in the East, expected East Division champion, right? And I've been wondering, we've mulled this over so much, and prior to the season, like, who's next? Who's the second best team in the East behind Georgia that can, obviously we had the game last Saturday with Missouri and Georgia. We thought maybe Kentucky was that team. And we saw that Kentucky just can't
Splattered.
they can't seem to get anything done. They couldn't do anything versus Georgia. and Missouri has really shown themselves approved. They've really turned around what we had described as a Eli Drinkwitz was on the hot seat.
I mean, yeah, and coming into the season, you heard a lot of people say if Missouri doesn't make a bowl, he's out, and he's going to do a lot more than make a bowl.
And you've got Tennessee, and I don't want to disrespect Tennessee. I just want to see like what they can do versus a team like Missouri. Not that I counted them out early in the year, but I kind of wanted to see more, and they're getting it done. Look, it's going to be a good game, I think. It's a 1-point spread. I'll give them 4. 31-27. Tennessee gets the victory in this one, and they claim that runner-up spot in the East.
Well, that is if Georgia beats Ole Miss, because if Ole Miss does beat Georgia, then Tennessee versus Georgia the next week will be for the SEC East. Now,
Boy, that would be a game.
Yeah, that would be crazy. We'll dive into that. It's definitely possible, but I'm going to just stay. I think this is for second place. Now, it can happen, and I'll probably look like an idiot, and people clip this and say, look at this guy. He didn't think it was possible. But I'm going to say this is for second place in the East, in my opinion.
Freezing cold take.
Yeah, I'm going to be a freezing cold takes on X, not Twitter, X. But, yeah, what's the next game? That was the 2:30 slot, so I'm guessing we got the nightcap.
That is correct, sir.
Let's save the Ole Miss Georgia for last.
Okay. Actually, there's a 3 p.m. Central Time game, Auburn and Arkansas. You want to hit that one real quick?
Man.
Arkansas 3 points.
You talk about the Battle of Mid. This is the Battle of Mid. This should be a great game, though. It's like one of those SEC games where the quality of play might not be very good, but it's going to be a very fun game to watch. Look, Auburn's got a really good defense. Been saying it all year. Their offense has struggled. I will say their offense came alive against Mississippi State, but I think that's more of a Mississippi State problem than an Auburn solution. But Arkansas, miraculous win to me in the swamp. Didn't see that coming. Huge. They scored like 39. Was more than they'd probably scored in the last 4 games combined. I just think there's something working right now in Fayetteville. Give me Arkansas to beat Auburn in this one. I think Arkansas, after they fired their offensive coordinator, they went down there and they got the big win over Florida. I think that's going to ignite them. They were really, I don't know if y'all saw the videos, they were real emotional after they beat Florida. They were like hugging each other and like they were like, yeah, we got this. Like you could just almost see that they're starting to believe. Because look, if Arkansas wins out, they can make a bowl. And it's not likely because they have to play Missouri the last game of the year, but they have Auburn, FIU, and Missouri. If they beat them all, they can make a bowl. I'm taking Arkansas in this one. Give me a close game. I could very well see Auburn winning. I just trust Arkansas's. I trust KJ Jefferson more than I do Peyton Thorne, and I don't think anybody should have a problem with that. But I'm going to take Arkansas to win this one. Give me 24-21. Arkansas wins.
24-21. Interesting. So, I don't even know what to say about this game. I think the big takeaway is that quarterback battle, if you would even call it that. Peyton Thorne, that Auburn quarterback fiasco that Hugh Freeze has found himself in here. Is it surprising that they've won 5 games so far? I mean,
yeah, if Auburn goes bowling, that's a win for Hugh Freeze, in my opinion. With the roster he was dealt, he got his transfer quarterback and Peyton Thorne in from Michigan State. Didn't even go through spring practice with the team. If Auburn makes a bowl, I say that's a win for Hugh Freeze.
I kind of look back to SEC media days. I remember his body language, and when asked questions about what he thinks the team's going to be, it really seemed like he knew himself that it was going to take some time, that they were going to have to kind of build this up, that it wasn't here yet. I feel like he didn't want to raise them up too high, that way that the fan base wouldn't expect too much of them this year. But like you said, I think you go to a bowl game I think that's big, and there's a lot to build on going into the next year. And for Arkansas, I mean they're clawing for scraps here. I'm really torn on this game. I really am. And it's
the battle of mid, man.
The battle of mid. You said 24-21. You say it's Arkansas cover, correct?
Because
it's Arkansas -3, so that would be a
push.
So I'm gonna go Auburn here. Not much scoring in this game. 21-17. 21-17 Auburn.
All right, Cole, you're on the clock.
All right, both teams are really bad. They got some good players on either team, but I think Auburn's defense is a little better than KJ Jefferson at the end of it. And I'm gonna go 17-14. Auburn wins it on a last-second field goal.
All right, y'all are hating on my Arkansas pick, but that's okay. No, really, I could see it going. It could break either way. And at the end of the day, who cares if you're not an Auburn or Arkansas fan, to be honest with you? I don't think no Tennessee fan or anything's watching this and saying, oh, man, who's going to win? All right, what's next?
So you said we're going to hold Ole Miss Georgia to the end. Let's move on to the next game. Let's hit Florida, going to Death Valley to play LSU. LSU is 6-3, and they are a 13.5-point favorite in this game. Florida's 5-4, looking for a bowl berth. Where do you even start?
Well, I'm going to keep it short and sweet because I want to spend a little bit of time on the Georgia Ole Miss game. So this Florida LSU game, look, the big question obviously is Jaden Daniels playing. I don't know. Some people are saying he's got a broken jaw from that hit, that's crazy. Break a man's jaw, hitting him so hard. But if he doesn't play, where's it at, Death Valley? Nighttime?
Yeah.
You know what? Even if he doesn't play, give me LSU. LSU's defense is absolutely atrocious, like record-setting bad.
407 average yards allowed per game this season.
Yeah, that's like some Tennessee Ole Miss stuff. So, give me LSU to win. If Jaden Daniels plays, it's not even. I don't think it'll be that close. If he doesn't, I still take LSU because it's at home. Look, Florida, demoralizing loss. That was your best chance to make a bowl, was to beat Arkansas, get your 6th win. I just think LSU's offense is just too good. Neighbors, Brian Thomas, those guys against that young secondary of Florida. Give me LSU to win. I'll take LSU 38, Florida, 31 because the defense. Yeah, the defense of LSU is that bad.
So sort of a mild shootout.
Yeah, and that's if Jaden Daniels doesn't play. If he does, they might score 50. I don't know.
If he doesn't play, okay. So is this a last drive? Is this last drive scoring here for LSU to win this game?
No, this is more like Florida gets a last-second TD to make it close.
I see. Well, you pretty much said it. Jaden Daniels he's great. It's been fun to watch him this year, what he's been able to do. Really put the team on his back. And look, LSU, they've got incredibly high their ceiling, especially after the momentum coming from last year. You had the SEC West. They won the SEC West in Brian Kelly's first year. Like, he went straight to the top. And that fan base is going to expect that. That's the thing about LSU. It's one of those places where, you got to win, and you got to win a lot. There's a lot of pressure on you. So they better win this game. They've got the time slot and their advantage. They've got the venue to their advantage. It's 13.5. I still say regardless, like you said, if Jaden Daniels plays or if he doesn't play, LSU wins this game. Give me 41-14. 41-28. 41-28, LSU gets the victory over the Gators.
There are 3 things that I love in college football this year. 1 is hearing Rocky Top as many times as I can. 2 is watching Shane Beamer after a loss. And number 3 is watching Brian Kelly after he loses. So I'm going to take Florida 38-24. They're going to be just so down after this past week that they're actually going to lose a game. And Brian Kelly's going to be just complaining all up in that press conference, boys. 38-24, Florida. You watch it. I'll be sending text messages next week.
I mean, it's possible.
That defense is bad.
Oh, it's atrocious, and I
don't think Jaden's going to play either, so.
Yeah, he very well might. I'm not man enough to put my
Have we seen the backup play that much? You know what I mean?
Put my pride in Graham Mertz.
Bama game, that's all he's played, really, isn't it? The backup.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
but I can't put.
Hey, Graham Mertz, he's sort of on a upward trajectory as of late. I mean,
Death Valley at night.
I'm not scared of Death Valley. I think that's a hoax.
Oh, come on. I've been there.
I'm not scared of Death Valley.
It's loud.
I bet it's an awesome atmosphere, but, I mean, so is Jordan Hare, but it's not very intimidating
Jordan
this
Hare
year.
was awesome, too. All right, let's get into the game that everyone cares about.
Hey, are we going to neglect Mississippi State and Texas A&M? I mean, come on.
All right, I'll keep it real short. Texas A&M wins. It's not close. Mississippi State doesn't score. Does it score a touchdown? Yeah, Mississippi State doesn't score a touchdown. Texas A&M 31-3.
31-3.
Yeah, not much else to say. Mississippi State's terrible identity. If you've watched their games, it's almost unwatchable. They have to run QB power the entire time. They can't throw. They can't run. They're starting running backs out, starting quarterbacks out. Defense is just night and day from last year. Even though their defense coordinator's now their head coach, their defense got worse. Don't ask me how. They're just bad. I don't think anyone in that locker room believes in Zach Arnett. I think they've rolled over. I think they're done. They're done with the season. I don't think you're going to see much effort. It's at College Station. Even though A&M's not the greatest, their defense is stout. And, yeah, 31-3.
Ooh, boy. I will take everything you said, copy it, 38-9. 3 field goals for the Bulldogs in this ball game. 38-9. A&M gets a victory.
Cole's about to pick Mississippi State just because we all.
Come
on.
You
know what I love to hear them cowbells. No, I was kidding. No, this is if it was at State, I would have given them like maybe double digits in points. But they're pretty bad to watch right now. And Will Rogers is definitely just not playing because he doesn't want to at this point. So we all know that. I'm going to give A&M's looking pretty good on offense right now. It may be just because of Ole Miss, but State's is going to be much better. So I'm going to go 38-3, and 3 was generous. I almost went a shutout, but I couldn't do it.
Watch Mississippi State win.
If Mississippi State scores more than 3 touchdowns, that's a win.
If Mississippi State scores 2 touchdowns, that's a win.
That's a win.
Look,
The Butch Jones win.
I'll say it right now on the podcast. If anyone out there listens or finds this, I will put $100 down that Mississippi State doesn't score 20 or more points.
That's an easy bet.
And I almost said 10, but I couldn't quite go that low. But, yeah, it's a bad start going. Look, some of my best friends are State fans. I love y'all. Y'all stick through it. It's rough, but there are better days ahead. All right.
We'll make it up.
The big game of the day. You're going to have College Game Day is going to be there. The big crew from ESPN. You're going to have the primetime game. It's going to have all the bells and whistles. They don't spare any expense on the big ESPN primetime game. I assume Pat McAfee, if any of you out there care anything about him and his silly crew will probably be on the sidelines there in Sanford Stadium. It's the Ole Miss Rebels.
That little broadcast they do, it's so annoying.
Yeah.
The shirt will be off at least.
Mine might be.
Of Kirk Herbstreit. You know what? I'll be honest with you guys. I think it was one of those games this year. I think I watched that McAfee cast like way too much of the game. And I just never changed the channel. It's pretty sad. I told that to somebody like that following Monday. I can't remember who it was,
Probably
but
me.
it may have been. I got laughed at. But anyway, you got Kirk Herbstreit, Chris Fowler on the call. I would imagine 6 p.m. What is that line on that game?
It's actually 7 Eastern time.
7
6
Eastern,
Central.
6 Central. Well, if we want to be technical, sir.
Well, that's for all our listeners in the East Coast.
That's right. I try to remember that. You got Georgia minus 10.5 in this game. Ole Miss coming off that 38-35 victory over Texas A&M. And the Rebels are going to travel 450 miles. Did you know, Zach? It's about 450 miles from Vaught Hemingway Stadium to Sanford Stadium. I guess it depends on which route you take, but it's something like that.
You didn't know that either until you Googled it.
Come on now. I measured that myself. I drove all the way from anyway.
Well, look, this is the biggest game of my life that I've ever been able to go to personally. Night game, Athens. Top 10 matchup, college game day there. I've actually never been to a Georgia night game. I've been to like 22-something Georgia games. Never been at night for whatever reason. So this is going to be awesome for me. I'm looking forward to it. One of my buddies is going with me. That's a huge Ole Miss fan. We're leaving out Friday afternoon driving, staying there the whole 9. Spending all day in Athens, literally getting there in the morning, going to game day. Probably not for long, just kind of see what it's all about. Never been. Do all that. This is a legacy game for Zach. I mean, this is big. I mean, biggest game of my life. This is where I really got to show up, for the team. You know, if I can yell after this game's over, I didn't do my job, in the words of Kirby Smart. So, look, now getting into the actual game, not just the me being funny part of it, but let me ask this. Let me ask some more funnies, actually. Is this the biggest game in Ole Miss's program history? My buddy that's going with me, he's been to a lot of the big games. He was at Vaught Hemingway when they beat Alabama. He had season tickets for years. He's been to a lot of the huge games. He says, in his opinion, this is the biggest game in Ole Miss program history. Top 10 matchup. If Ole Miss wins, Cole was saying it, I think, before the podcast started. If Ole Miss wins, they got a shot at the playoffs. Now, it's an outside chance, but if they win out, yeah, they won't go to the SEC championship because Bama virtually clinched. But the committee could say, hey, they went 11-1 and beat a top 3 ranked Georgia Bulldogs in Athens at night. Brandon, you're an Ole Miss fan. Cole, you can chime in on this too. Is this the biggest game in Ole Miss's history?
Cycling through all the previous games that I can remember, I mean, obviously you had the big games versus Alabama, 2 of them. One in particular in 2014 in Oxford, where the Rebels got it done over the I think they were number 1 in the coaches poll, number 2 in the AP, something like that. Ole Miss was 11. Huge game, but it was kind of an unexpected thing.
Yeah,
it wasn't like the ramifications weren't. It wasn't the same as.
No one really expected Ole Miss to win. Let's be honest.
Come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I can't think of another one that you can put in this spot where you kind of. It almost gives you butterflies, kind of, because you've got everything is it's game day. Everybody's gonna be watching this game. You've got these 2 SEC teams, and we talk about the SEC beating up on each other all throughout the season. More of that here, 2 really good teams, just making things happen. You've got the Rebels on fire. They managed to – I think they're getting a rhythm on the ground. You know, Quinshon Judkins his rushing attack has kind of improved since earlier in the year. I don't know if he may have been a little injured, banged up, but I think more so that is Ulysses Bentley, which was behind him, that really kind of come up out of nowhere, that has that's kind of made him better, I think. And them as a duo, I think, is really big in this Ole Miss offense. You have Jackson Dart that you can tell he's getting comfortable. Now, he's been in some situations. I remember in that Alabama game, he forced a pass or 2 and he does at times. Now the question is, how does this defense match up to that Georgia offense? We saw that Carson Beck has been able to spread the ball around. He's been able to figure it out with Brock Bowers out with injury. What do they do? What more can they do? I mean, he's been able to. He's shown that he can take that, because I would call that adversity. I mean, you have your biggest player, at least your biggest pass catcher, get hurt like that, and that just proves that Georgia, like we said a few weeks ago, not a one-dimensional, not a two-dimensional team, three-dimensional. They can get it done. What's the rushing game look like?
So, would you say, is it the biggest game?
I would say it's the biggest game, yeah.
Cole, did you want to add anything before I dive?
I think it's easily the biggest game for Ole Miss, because those Bama games, like, yeah, they were fun to watch and people were like tuned in to watch them, but I don't think you had this many people watching just because of the implications this game has. And two, this is Lane Kiffin's. It could be his signature game. He don't really have one yet, I think, at Ole Miss personally. Some people will say LSU, but I don't think he has a signature win yet. And so I think this right here can put him above a lot of Ole Miss coaches have passed and a lot of the successes they've had in the past. If he can pull this one out, nobody
could question that. I think it's like everybody. So he had a 10-win season at Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin, that is, 2 years ago. They managed to win 8 last year, and they have a good chance of having at least a 10-win season again this year. But like you're right, Cole. The question that people have is, where is that signature win? Like, they've won a lot of games, but who have you won against? And this would be massive.
This is bigger than a signature win.
Massive.
This is program.
This
changing.
Legacy.
Yeah, this is legacy. Like, so I'll now want to dive into the X's and O's and like the game plan. And look, folks, I have a problem. I'm addicted to football. I spend way too much time on it. I watch a lot of film, even though I'm not a coach or I'm not an analyst or anything. I'm that weird guy with the iPad at night, watches film of teams that they're about to play, watches people on YouTube break down film. Try to learn the X's and O's, and I've watched a lot of Georgia film this year, a ton of it. I've watched every single game that Georgia's played this year, every play, the all 22 of every play. And I'm not some X's and O expert, but I do know this. Georgia is a really, really good football team on offense. Everybody really usually wants to point to, what do you think of when you think of Georgia? Typically defense, right? A lot of people want to say the last 2 years that Georgia won the national championship in spite of Stetson Bennett. Like, that Stetson Bennett was a negative thing. They won because their defense was so great, which in some parts is true, especially that first year. Defense was elite. Defense. I'd argue it's a little opposite this year. Georgia has a great defense, don't get me wrong. I'd say it's the second best defense in the SEC behind Alabama. But it's not as elite as it has been in years past. That's just facts. You can look at the numbers. It'll tell you the same thing. Georgia has a good defense, but it's not as elite as it has been. But when Georgia's defense fell down a little bit, I think their offense stepped up a little bit. I think Georgia's offense right now in this moment is more dangerous than any of the offenses they've had the last 2 years. And you might think if you're riding in a car or something, don't wreck when I say that. But Georgia right now is very, very dangerous on offense. And I think that's the biggest tale in this game, is because Ole Miss is very, very good on offense. Don't get me wrong. Ole Miss is going to score points this weekend. I guess a fact. It's not going to be like a 50-0 drumming like the national championship was over TCU. Ole Miss is going to be able to score on this Georgia defense. Everybody has this year for the most part. Missouri just put up 21 on Georgia's defense. They're not the monster they have been the last 2 years, where if you got 10, you were like, yes, moral victory. We scored 10 on Georgia. They're gettable this year. But I think Georgia's so good on offense, averaging over 40 points a game this year. I think they're going to be able to take advantage of this Ole Miss defense. And don't get me wrong, Ole Miss's defense, from when Lane first got there to where they are now, night and day.
Oh, yeah.
Ole Miss's defense right now it's kind of like the Tennessee thing to me, where, Ole Miss's defense used to be like those Tennessee defenses where you could not rely on them to make a stop to save their life. But now both programs you see have a viable defense out there on the field. I think Georgia's offense is going to be able to expose that Ole Miss defense. We saw some cracks in it last week against Texas A&M, right? We saw them give up 35 to Max Johnson in this A&M offense. They were able to throw on Ole Miss. Look, this isn't just a biased opinion. Carson Beck's a top 3 quarterback in the SEC. Him and Jackson Dart both. Carson Beck's second in the SEC in passing yards. He's second in completion percentage. He's like third in completion percentage in the country. He is a very good quarterback. People don't know his name because maybe he's not the biggest story as Stetson Bennett was, or he's maybe not as vocal as Stetson Bennett was, but Carson Beck is a very good quarterback. He's got great receivers to throw to. Georgia's going to get this done. I think Georgia comes out here and makes a statement. I think the moment's too big for Ole Miss. They've never, as Cole said, I don't think they've ever had as many eyes on them as there's going to be on this weekend. Kirby Smart's played coached these games. These players have all played in bigger games than this, national championships, playoff games. Look, I've just got a feeling night, Athens, biggest game in Athens at night since 2017 Notre Dame. Georgia doesn't get many night games at home. This atmosphere is going to be absolutely electric. Huge game. My score is going to be a little crazier than most people think, but I'll explain that a little bit. Give me the Dogs 41-17. I think they're going to make a statement on national television that, hey, yeah, Brock Bowers is out, and that's what a lot of people want to talk about right now, but we have a lot of other guys that can hurt you. And I think this game is going to be really tight at the half. I think this is going to be a game where people are like, dang, Ole Miss is really hanging in there. They've got a shot to do it. And I think Kirby Smart's going to tell them to have that championship mentality is going to kick in. And I think the second half they're going to roll. I think they're going to be able to score at will in the second half on Ole Miss. And I think they're going to stop and stuff Ole Miss's offense. We've seen Alabama do it. When Ole Miss couldn't run the ball against Alabama, what happened? They scored 10 points. Alabama kind of stopped the run game, put everything on Jackson Dart, dared him to make a play, put a spy on him, don't let Jackson Dart run. Dared Jackson Dart to make a play, and he wasn't able to make enough plays to beat Alabama. And I don't think he's going to be able to make enough plays to beat Georgia. I could easily see Ole Miss scoring in the 20s, though. But I'm going to say 17, but I'll say it. Ole Miss's offense is going to put some points on Georgia's defense. I just think that the atmosphere of this game is going to play a huge role. I think we're going to see a lot of false starts, a lot of penalties like that the crowd's going to have an impact on. And I think the lights are going to be a little too bright for Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin. Give me the Dogs to roll 41-17. Whoever wants to go next, take it away.
Cole, what do you think about this game?
I'll be honest. I think Georgia's a really good football team. I think the difference this year, I don't know more so this year, but their offensive line is really good. This is a great situation for Beck to be in. He can throw the football really well. He can read defenses really well. I would like to see what happens I want to see a defense get in his face a lot. Like I want to see, but it's gonna be really tough with that offensive line. I do think this is the most beatable Georgia, the easiest beatable team he's had in the last couple of years. Though I do think you can beat Georgia.
Yeah.
I don't think their defense is as good. It's still great. Like I would love to have the defense. But I see what Zach's saying. I see like the moment being too big, but I also see that like these kids, they're not supposed to win this game, even though it's a big game. And so I think you're going to see Dart. I think you're going to see him play pretty hard, and it might get him some mistakes, but I'm going to have him scoring a lot more points. I do have Georgia winning the game. Sadly enough, I was really hoping this would make this a matchup, Tennessee versus Georgia for the East. But I have to go with my gut. I think Georgia wins the game 41-31.
I could easily see that score, and I agree with you. This is the most beatable Georgia has been in the last 3 years, I would say. Something else is, man, people need to realize they're playing this game without their best player, Brock Bowers. Their All-American right tackle, who's in mock drafts right now in the top 10, hasn't played in 3 weeks. that's the scary part. If you're someone who has Georgia on the upcoming schedule, is they just beat Missouri by 9 without an All-American tight end and an All-American right tackle. It is worth noting that All-American middle linebacker Jamon Dumas-Johnson broke his forearm against Missouri. Some people are saying he's going to play with the club. Some people are saying he's not going to play. I don't know, but that's like the part to me. If you're someone playing Georgia, it's like, man, we're not beating these guys, and they're missing some key guys at some key positions, and they're still getting it done. Now, there is a world where Ole Miss beats Georgia. Do not get me wrong. Ole Miss has everything they need to beat Georgia. Listen, to beat Georgia and compete with Georgia, you have to have an elite quarterback. Think about the quarterbacks who have beat Georgia or almost beat Georgia over the past 5 years. Joe Burrow's beat Georgia. Bryce Young's beat Georgia. C.J. Stroud should have beat Georgia. They didn't. Hendon Hooker, they stayed in the game somewhat last year. He's an elite quarterback. I can't think of anybody else who's beaten Georgia over the past 3 or 4 years. You have to have an elite quarterback to do it. I think Jackson Dart's elite. I think he's a really, really good quarterback. You have to have elite weapons on the outside. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson for Burrow, John Mechie, Jamison Williams for Bryce Young. Hendon Hooker had Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman. All great weapons. Who does Ole Miss have? Well, they have a guy who he only needs one arm to catch footballs, apparently. Trey Harris. Really, really good player. If you don't know his name, he's a stud wide receiver for Ole Miss. They got Watkins. They've got guys. I hadn't even mentioned Quinshon Judkins, probably the best running back or one of the best running backs in the SEC. They've got the weapons to do it. Look, if Lane Kiffin comes out here and schemes it up, it all is going to come down, though, to Ole Miss's defense to me. I don't have a question. I know they can score points on Georgia. It's can their defense get enough stops, and that's where I'm just going to have to say no. And they blitz a lot. They're going to bring a lot of pressure. They're going to try to do what Cole's saying. They're going to try to get in Carson Beck's grill. They blitz, I think, more, maybe not more, but it's like the second or third most in the SEC. And they actually lead are top 3 in the country in sack rate. 9% of plays that they're on defense, they get a sack. That's a lot. That's almost 10% of the plays they're on the field, they get a sack. They're going to come after Carson Beck. But I think the offensive line, and the thing about Carson Beck, I think Cole said it well, he's a great processor and a great reader of defenses. You watch anybody break down his film, draft guys that are in college, or that just break down stuff for NFL draft time. You go look it up on YouTube, Carson Beck breakdown, the QB school, all those guys. They'll tell you Carson Beck's a great processor. He knows before the play what the defense is doing. That's what makes him so good. It's not that necessarily he's the most talented quarterback of all time, but he knows before he snaps the ball exactly where he needs to go with the ball, where the hole's going to be. That's going to be the thing. Can Ole Miss confuse him? Can Ole Miss bring some blitzes that he's not used to where he doesn't know who's coming? That's what it's going to come down to. Pete Golding and that Ole Miss defense. Personally, I don't think they're going to be able to make enough stops. What do you say, Brandon?
So that's going to be tough to see, honestly. That the defense is, I think, and you said this a minute ago, well improved in the past 3 years, 4 years. I would push that on back to maybe the past, maybe 8 years. I mean, the Ole Miss defense has just not been able to produce anything. And like what I've noticed this year so far is there are some positive plays for the defense. You're getting some turnovers. You're not just trying your best to hold them back. Hold back the inevitable in the other offense scoring a touchdown every time they get on the field, but actually breaking that up a little bit, And we'll just have to see, man. I mean, it's a new this Georgia offense, I think is a new, it's the next level. It's a step up from that. I guess Alabama would have been the only comparable offense that you have faced this year. So what do you do? Does scheme help? Pete Golding, I think I like the way he's running the defense. I hated that defense that was run. I can't remember the guy's name that was the defensive coordinator prior to him coming. And there's a good reason for that. But from just a scheme standpoint, I did not like the defenses, man, and I don't know if the defensive backs are good enough to keep up with what Georgia has receiving wise. But that'll be interesting to see, and see if they can get some pressure on Carson Beck, and maybe try to disrupt some plays. But that's the key. I mean, you got to get pressure. You got to force Carson Beck to make bad throws, make bad decisions. Now, for Ole Miss on the offensive side of the ball, I couldn't have said it better myself, Zach. You got Trey Harris, Jordan Watkins out wide. They're stars running the ball. Quinshon Judkins, Ulysses Bentley, a great duo there. Jackson Dart, really, he's just got to that Georgia atmosphere, 6 o'clock, and I think it would have been the same if it's 2:30, regardless if it was the 2:30 Central Time or 6:30. I think the atmosphere is the same, maybe a little bit turned up to 10, turned up to 11 because it's a night game. Should be exciting to watch. The thing that I've also noticed about Ole Miss is the penalties, especially on big plays. If you want to beat a team like Georgia, you can't have penalties, silly penalties. You can't hold when you get 20, 30 yards. If you manage to get 20, 30 yards on this Georgia defense, if you manage to score, you can't have it brought back because of a penalty. They got to get the play out. No silliness. No silliness. You've got to be near perfect to beat this team. I want to be as neutral as I can, and obviously we all know what I would like to happen in this game. But I think to be neutral here, I think Georgia gets it done 38-27 over the Rebels. It'll be a great game. I think it'll start off sort of slow, maybe at halftime. I see it as being a game like that, like you said, Zach. But Georgia, they keep their foot on the gas, and Ole Miss in the maybe middle ways to the third quarter. In the fourth quarter, they're just not able to do any more. They score 27 by the end of the third, zip in the fourth. I think that's how it's going to be. I don't want it to be that way, but that's what it looks like just from my perspective.
Hey, Lane, get your popcorn ready.
Get your popcorn ready.
That'll probably come back to bite me. We'll lose. And
you got to throw your headset, too, when you say that.
Yeah. Well, that's the last thing I'll say. Lane Kiffin versus Kirby Smart. I put my money on Kirby every day of the week, and
I mean, how can you not?
Lane Kiffin in these big games, we've seen several times where he's supposed to have beat Alabama. This year, everybody said Ole Miss has got a really good shot to beat Alabama. A couple years ago, when he said the popcorn ready, everybody was like, "This is the game. The Ole Miss is going to beat Alabama," and they came up short both years. And maybe it's something about big games for Lane. We'll see if he gets a win. It's possibly the biggest win in Ole Miss history. If he gets a loss, no one's going to feel like nobody's going to be
literally
that mad
on
at
the
him.
season. They're not in a better spot. I mean, and I told you this earlier. You're looking at 10 wins. You lose to Georgia, you're looking at 10 wins on this year. You've got Louisiana Monroe and Mississippi State in Starkville, the Egg Bowl, to end the season after this game here. 10-2 with a New Year's Six is looking very likely. It's a positive. It's a good season. Like last year, the Rebels were hot, man. The Lane train was rolling.
Won 8 in a row, then lost 4 in a row, I think.
Got derailed. Yes, that's correct. They lost. 5 if you want to include the bowl game, the Texas Bowl. We won't talk about that though.
So, my last thing, because I know I've kept Cole and everybody too long, and we got to go to bed, and kids, and the whole nine. You know how it is. Father's out here. But last thing I wanted to say was, I forgot now, so this is embarrassing. What the heck was it? I was going to say something.
Say it.
Well, man, I can't remember what it was.
Oh, you got it.
Well, this is a great way to end it. I really can't think of what I was going to say. But anyway,
More about did it involve the Georgia Bulldogs?
It involves something about Georgia and Ole Miss.
Cole, do you believe that?
So, we'll end the show, I guess, because I can't remember what I was going to say. But thank you, Cole, for joining us. We hope we didn't keep you too long.
Absolutely not. It's been great.
We hope you enjoyed it, and everybody listening out there, give us a like, a follow, a share, would retweet, whatever you do on TikTok when you want people to see your videos. Share it with your friends. Subscribe, all that good stuff, and follow Cole Carr at Misfit Disc Golf. I think that's the name of it. On TikTok, Instagram, all the places, if you like disc golf, that sort of thing. And you got any closing remarks you want to say, Cole?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I hated myself about 10 minutes ago for trying to be like mature and everything. But actually, Ole Miss is going to win this weekend. They're going to win 34-31. That's how I want to end it with.
Really?
I'll second that.
Way too
I'll
mature
second
earlier.
that.
34-31, baby.
Okay. Well, if that
Just
happens,
burning it down up in this place.
If Ole Miss,
I'm gonna text y'all when Florida wins, and then when Ole Miss wins.
I've already thought about it. I'm gonna be in Sanford this weekend. It's gonna be night. I've already pictured it in my head. If like Ole Miss wins on a game-winning field goal, I might cry. Like, this is a legacy.
I also blame Zach for why we lost to Alabama because he texted me at halftime and said congratulations on 2 years in a row. I just want to say that.
I said that to you and my buddy, and y'all both had the same response. Was like, stop.
Leave us alone.
All right, well, for RideAlong Sports, from Brandon, from Zach, and from special guest Cole, we will catch y'all next week. See ya.
Peace.